Good evening, folks. You guys joining with me, Ash Alan Talks, and I'm your host, Ash. If you guys frequently listening to Ash Alan Talks, you know me. If not, I'm Ash from Dubai, and we're having a very important guest today. At the same time, I know the weather is not that much good in Dubai, but guys, be safe and keep yourself warm up, and flood is going on, and I think you will be okay, and people who are listening to this, be safe. And yeah, even in United States my friends are listening, and I feel you also feeling okay, and the weather condition is very well. My important guest today is a financial coach for Gen Xers actually, and a podcast host for Wealthy After 40, Dalene Higgins. Welcome to Ash Allen Talks.
Thank you, Ash. I'm excited to be here.
Wow. We are planning to discuss more about personal debt today. And Dalene, I would like to ask, actually, what is debt and what is personal debt? How it's different from a company perspective?
Yeah, so debt means you have gone into an agreement with somebody to borrow money at a cost, right? The person is going to let you borrow their money, but they're going to charge you an extra fee to pay it back. And so there are, different types of debt. Personal debt, you can be found through consumer or credit card debt that is open-ended, it's unsecured, it's going to cost you more in interest if you use that. There are secured debts, which means the loan person giving you, the lender giving you the money, has closed that off. They've only given you so much, and they've already said it's going to cost you this. And so being able to understand those two differences and being able to balance those to number one is like having a purpose for it, as opposed to maybe just using it because, and I get that there are emergencies. So a lot of people use credit cards, but learning how to maybe pre-plan for potential unexpected things can kind of curb either the use at all or how much you have to actually use it. So understanding unsecured and secured is very important, and maybe balancing those, especially for your credit score. You're going to want to do a mix of those. That is one of the things figured into your credit score, is the actual mix of different types of loans.
Mm-hmm. And with that note, what is the advantage of debts? Because a lot of people, even a lot of my followers, tweeted me yesterday regarding this question in the podcast, and they are actually looking like, okay, I am getting the money from a bank or a personal finance institute, so I am receiving some income. So, what is the actual disadvantage of debt, and how they cannot see when the money is coming in inflow? They looks like it's a positive way. So, what is actually the disadvantages of debt, and how they can accumulate this debt owing to other people? And because a lot of people are not aware of this 2% or 10% or 5%, they it looks like a very small amount of money when they're getting a lump sum amount into their pocket. So how it
Yeah.
will affect their finance in a long run?
Secured debt's a little bit better. It's not as volatile, but you are going to be stuck paying that payment for certain number of years. And so if you were to experience a wage cut, job loss, that right there is going to, leave your capability not being able to make that debt payment. I think another way to look at it is, as you go in for a loan of any sort. I did this on my very first home loan. I said, I only want to pay this much per month. Understanding how much you can actually pay in payments prior to going to a lender is a huge way in you taking control. Instead of going in and say, how much can I qualify for? Because I can guarantee you the lender is going to give you a higher number than you probably should be comfortable with. So exploring that number pre-getting with the lender, and then maybe finding a balance in between for especially what you're buying, is so important. But yeah, the credit cards are hard to determine the actual length of time and the actual cost. But back from, I believe it was 08 when they started this, on the back of the first page of the statement. So even if you are just getting a PDF view online, it should still be there. It is going to explain to you the number of years at the minimum payment it will take to pay off. And I have I tell my listeners and I tell my clients, go explore this, go understand this, that, it's 25, 30 years at that minimum payment. That's how long it takes you to pay off your mortgage, if not longer, with, certain housing prices in different various parts of of the world. It just ends up taking that piece of the pie. You go to work, you make so much money, and every time you reach out to a lender, it's taking more and more away from that piece of the pie. And then we just recently experienced inflation. It just has grown so bad. That's another piece of the pie being taken away from you. And that's how you quickly lose control of your money, is by not really thinking about all of the possibilities. And I don't like to be a doomsdayer. I don't like to be but you do need to be prepared. You need to be taking full control of your money if you can, and being ready to make those decisions under full knowledge of what it's going to cost you and for how long. And then, there's certain careers that very volatile, job loss can happen, just tech markets up and down and all over. And there's others that, are a little more stable, but they don't pay as much. So you've got to experience where you're at. What does that look like? And prepare for your situation.
Hmm. And with that note, and a lot of people are asking me about the consumer leverage ratio. That means, let's say we're having a job, and we're having a wages or a salary every month end, like let's say $20,000, and they are looking for a loan, like a percentage of, okay, I will go for a loan of 20% from my salary, or 30% from my salary, regardless of other expenses. So how a person can align the loan amount compared to his salary, and what is the ratio, or is there any actual ratio, or how it mindset come to the people? It's just like how things will work.
Yeah, yeah. So, there are some guidances, especially for, you can look towards the credit score and looking there as how do you keep that high. They say 30% or less. And a lot of lenders will loan up to 50%, sometimes 55%. So using those guidances and thinking about, your 30% of the pie, if you want to give that to somebody, what does that look like? Are you then still able to cover all of the rest of the things you need? Number one, we need to make sure we're, housing and warmth, water, food, gas, if we're working, all of those things are necessary. That has to come into the next piece of the puzzle. You really don't want to be operating, I would say, above 50%. And I understand, like, if you're very new to your career, very new to your job, maybe there's potential to grow. A very common thing around here now is to do buy downs on a home. So they're buying down the interest rate for about 3 years, hoping it will drop again or that their wages will go up. Well, 3 years is not very long. And then all of a sudden they're hit with nearly, a third, if not a double house payment. And they just are struggling. So they're having to go get, another job, both them and their spouse or partner. And so, think through, I think 30% max is probably good, but I hate to put in, really hard lines. So I love to say it's a guidance. Use that 30%, see what that looks like with your salary, with what you can afford. You might have to go up a little bit higher right now to be able to support, but just don't overextend yourself, because once you overextend, that's where you get into more problems. That's where you're not able to meet, repair on your car if it breaks down, new tires, if your home needs a repair. And then that's when you're turning to that unsecured debt, that credit card debt, which is going to cost you even more. You're looking at 20, 30, 40% interest on that. So really gauging, and so trying to protect you as you head into something. I love to say, stagger those payments. So if you buy a new car, you're in it 5 or 7 years. If you can hold off till 4 or 5 years for another car, if not the full 7, so that you're not overlapping. Sometimes we just have to delay the need or the want if we can. Is there another way? Is there a cheaper way? Is there, a swap we can do? So just exploring those different options instead of getting yourself in a decision where you're like, I have to make it today and it's either this one or this one, and neither one of them is good. That's where I don't like to see people get. I like them to be able to Sit with the information, kind of explore it, and be really prepared to make a good decision for them, for their situation, and what they can live with, moving it forward.
Wow. And when it's come to the loan part, I was thinking about the vehicles loan. So people, I have seen some articles, even from yesterday, I have saw an article from Robert Kiyosaki, right? He's mentioning like if you buy a vehicle, so the depreciation will be like 4 or 5 years. So the vehicle value is decreasing very fastly, but your loan amount will be constant value over a year. So how you viewing this point? So youngsters, especially when they're coming into market, they always need a good looking vehicle or a kind of a luxury stuff. And they have no idea about the loan and the percentages, and they're just going for a market and buying the vehicle which is good for them. And at the end point, when they're selling the vehicle or exchanging that one, they get to know, oh my God, this value is decreased like more than 60-70% of the market rate. So this kind of scenarios when it's come to vehicles, so how you viewing the loan and the vehicle purchases of youngsters?
Yeah. So before I jump into the youngster side of it, because I do have a story, my daughter just bought one, so I'll share that in just a moment. But thinking through value of vehicles, and I have probably my most favorite vehicle that I have owned ever. It does well, it has no problems. And, probably about 5 years ago, I was like, maybe I'll just get a newer model, just upgrade this one a little bit. My car was worth $1,000 for sale, not for trade in, for sale. And I'm like,
Wow.
my car is worth more to me than that $1,000. So I chose
True.
not to enter into that. So I think there's a lot of, exploring that and going, okay, I'm only going to get this back. It's really not, because it doesn't have any problems. It's just getting old. It's almost 20 years old, but it's just clicking along just fine. Small repairs here and there. So I think you really need to kind of reach into what you value. And youngsters, yes, they do value their car. My daughter finished college. Had a job. She wanted to buy this really nice, in a sense, it's a sports car. It's a two-seater Subaru that she absolutely loves. And she's like, I'm going to buy one. So my guidance to her was, and she's like, I will probably only ever be able to do it now. I don't have kids. I don't have a spouse. I don't, have really all of these other responsibilities. So understanding that, she said, this is the best time. I said, okay, as you go into it, and not buying brand new, I'm not somebody who buys brand new. I've just seen too many problems with that.
True.
But it's okay if you do. It's
I
okay if you do,
yeah, I have a very bad experience with buying a new car.
Yeah. I mean, I have two family members. They bought a brand new car, and 2 months later, it was wrecked and totaled, and they're out of the brand new car. And I know that's just like not typical, but yet I'm thinking, why buy brand new if in 2 months it's just demolished?
Yeah.
That's my thing. It's like, so as my daughter went into it, I'm like, you're going to find a break even point in the used market. So she was evaluating from 2022 back to like 2017. And there was a weird thing going on in some of those years in there. And she's like, I don't understand this. And I said, then that's the area you don't buy. So really consuming the information beyond just that I want this vehicle, this is a good vehicle, I can afford this price. Like really explore, is that the best deal for that car, for that, for whatever years in. I mean, she ended up getting a 2020 because the 2017 had some weird stuff going on, and the price was actually higher, and so just exploring all of that. She takes after her mom. She loves spreadsheets, so we spend a lot of time on spreadsheets, and not saying you have to, but go explore what markets are doing out there, what is happening, especially if you're buying a used vehicle anywhere from 3 to 5 to 8 years old. You can explore within that and find the best deal of the vehicle you want. So
Wow. And one more question regarding this. When it's come to paying off debt, right? Let's say the personal finance is unique to each and every person, right? So let's take an
yes.
example, a common one, like someone might have 2 or 3 credit cards or some loan payments or mortgages and vehicle loans. So how he manage, which one should be paid first and last, and how the criteria will work on this point?
Yeah, so there are several strategies, and I know a lot of people would jump right on that and say, "Yeah, you got to pay your credit cards off first." Honestly, I work with my clients and I present to them all strategies in what it looks like in paying off in years. There is a strategy that I know is not really out there a lot. It's if there's a debt that brings about bad feelings, other emotions with it, sometimes that's the best debt to get rid of, because not only is it a debt to you and costing you, it has you, going into this whole different state of mind. So as you explore all of your debts, which one do you want to get rid of first? I've had many clients of like, that was a stupid debt and I don't want it anymore. And I say, we start there then. It does not matter any of the other, specifics. But if you're somebody that you're like, I don't really have that, then you need to think about, are you somebody who needs to have a quick win? Are you needing to be rewarded fairly quickly? Then you're going to definitely want to start with those lower balances, get those paid off first. But if you're somebody who can stay the course and it doesn't matter to you and you want to save money in the end, you're going to do the high debt for, the high interest first and pay that down. Typically, you start with credit cards first and then you move to your secured loans, always making the minimum on everything as you're pursuing this. Once you get into the home, there's a lot of different advice out there. Some people are like, I would never pay off a home. Others are, fine with that. I currently am in a home that is paid off. I don't have the extra um, impact on my income coming into my house. I don't have that demand. I still have to pay taxes and insurance, but yet there is no other demand. I'm not paying that. Whereas if, I fell into that other camp, then who knows what my, mortgage loan would be, my payment would be every month, and there would always be that demand. Having that gone aided me and my husband to be able to retire in our 50s. So, there's different ways to look at it. If you have hard beliefs, you stick because they're with you for a reason, but explore why maybe that was passed on. Maybe you don't 100% agree with it, but if you do, hang on to it and you lean into that. I would never tell somebody you have to pay off your house just because I did.
Yeah, that was a very great example, I have to say. And one more question regarding that. Now, people having savings with them, personal savings, at the same time, personal debts. So these debts and credit cards, how they impact on their savings?
Yeah. So when I work with clients, a lot of them are, older, because they're needing to save retirement and that. They're like, can I do both? And I said, well, it depends on how quickly you want to get through your debt. So we always look at that first and always see what we can find extra that's already there or come up with some different ways of creating that extra. But I love to work with clients if they are like, okay, I want to focus on the debt first, that as they're going through on this plan, there's another plan to separate that extra money into debt and savings so that you're not completely ignoring the savings. But even prior to that, if you don't have any sort of emergency fund set up, we start there first. So savings is great for protection in emergencies and those financial surprises that are typically creators of debt. So if you can create that first, you've already stopped one of the problems that you may be dealing with. And then as we head into the plan, I was just working with a client. She works overtime fairly regular. It's not every paycheck, but it's usually every other month. Sometimes it can be, probably 20, 30 hours worth on a paycheck. And I'm like, okay, before you get that type of overtime, you need to have a plan. Is it all going to debt? Is it some of it going to debt and savings? Like, what is your priority with you working that extra overtime? How do you value that? How do you value those extra hours you put into work? Where do you want it to support you? Freedom from debt or freedom in the future with your savings? And so really guiding them to kind of create that. But yes, you can pay down debt and save at the same time.
Wow. And Dalene, one more thing regarding this conversation. So I'm having a friend. It's a real scenario, right? He took some loans and debt like a credit card and the stuff, and he got some lump sum money, and he invested all that money in his personal like entrepreneurship journey, and now he's paying debt for that. But actually, the point is for that entrepreneurship, it's a kind of a startup, so it need like 4 or 5 years momentum to cash inflow or get into a profit level or break even. So until that he is keep paying the debts, it's a kind of, it's not a, it's a kind of a personal loan anyway, because he took on his name, his company is not registered, it's a startup, and he kind of experimenting the stuff. So how are you viewing this point? This loan is a personal loan, or how can we categorize this one?
Well, personal loan or business loan, he's still on the hook for it,
Yeah, it's
right?
a personal loan. The company is not registered all in his name, and the things
Yep.
is going on that way.
Yep. So he has two choices. If he's not making money from that business in the very beginning, which most of the time we are not, then he definitely has to tap into personal funds to pay it. So it is a personal loan. Um, I think what you're also asking is like, there are some advantages to maybe getting some other types of loans for businesses where they can support your specific type of business, maybe the owner of the business, and there's a delay, right? Because they're willing to help you out, trust you, they believe in your business plan. Typically, you have to present that, your marketing plan included, all of those things in there, and they're like, okay, I feel like this is a good idea, and they become an investor in you, and maybe there's a delay of payment. So while taking out a personal loan for a business, I don't think that's wrong at all, but you just still need to make sure you have the ability to pay it back. Because if you are unable to, then, you're into the fact of hitting your credit score, maybe claiming bankruptcy, which isn't all bad. You can work through all of that, because I think definitely, taking on risk as an entrepreneur is good. It can really benefit you. And it does take 3, 4, 5 years before you're able to make that momentum.
Oh, wow. Guys, if you are entrepreneurs or startup people listening to this podcast, this is the advice for you. And we'll jump into the next question. Actually, how much debt is too much for a person?
When they're unable to make the payments every single month. Let me clarify that a little bit more. So even if you are making minimum, but you're still struggling to stay afloat, that is too much debt. You have to be able to take the quick right or the quick left as life happens at you, and putting yourself in a position of always returning to debt. I know I was in a networking group and somebody stood up and she says, you should go to my banker, because that's what we're doing, promoting other businesses. Go to my banker and get a HELOC. So the home equity line of credit is what we call them over here, for your emergency fund. And then if you have an emergency, you can go draw that money. And I'm like, but why are we not just putting money aside every single month? So I know a lot of people rely on it as a safety net, as a part of their financial decisions. And I'm not saying debt is bad, because I segued debt myself. It's just how you do that. How much is it impacting you? If it starts encroaching on you being able to provide the basic necessities of life, then you've reached your level of too much.
Wow. And just now I received a question. This one, let me read it. How can I avoid falling into debt in the future?
All
So,
right.
so I,
So
I
the
mean,
first,
I too having the same doubt. The loan actually it's a good thing or a bad thing, or is it better to avoid falling into the loans in the future, or it's better to just keep going the life, or managing the income with the small amount of loan? What is your idea? How you viewing this point?
yeah. So I'm going to give you whoever's asking this and others who have the same question. The best piece of advice is, and I know you're going to hate me for it, make sure you have a budget. Make sure you have a budget. And with that budget, you are creating, like I said, that emergency fund. I talk about on my Wealthy After 40 podcast that I don't like the term of emergency fund and the 3 to 6 months for job losses. And I explain further about how creating different buckets of money to support you as you think about that. So I'm going to pose that back to you now. As you're creating this, I want you to think about what is going to help you feel safe and protected and secure prior to getting into those debts, prior to taking those on. How am I going to be able to handle, if your air conditioner, your heater, your roof needs a repair? How are you going to handle those types of repairs if you're owning a home, if you don't have an emergency fund? You're going to turn to debt. Well, how about we just try to negate that at the very beginning? If you need new tires for your vehicle, I know there was a gal It was my niece sharing this story. Her friend, she traded in her vehicle, so extended her loan longer because she could not afford tires, brand new tires for her vehicle. And it's like, okay, so just prep for those small things. And I know it may feel large to you, and you're like, that is not small. Get started there. And then as you proceed, you'll be able to manage your debt easier. You go into buying a home or buying a car, you think, how is this going to impact me? How is it going to serve me? Does it fit into my overall plan? What do I value? Having a nice car. My brother-in-law, he's like, I'm sorry, but I just like a nice car. And I'm like, that's your value. I don't care. I don't care. I mean, I want a nice car, but I don't have nice cars like he does. And so really getting in tune with what you value and sticking to those values will help limit your debt as well. And just as you're moving along and progressing, just what would that impact of that new loan be on you? Always consider that. Don't go in and ask for, how much can I qualify for? I think that's where people are like, oh my gosh, they told me I can get this much. And they think how great that is and how grand that is. Okay, great. But they're not making the payment, you are. So then coming back to your budget, again, that's how we get back to the very first and saying, how does this impact me? Can I afford it? Do I support it? I'm currently trying to relocate states. And so as I'm doing so, like I said, I don't have a mortgage payment where I am at. Can I buy a home there and make a mortgage payment before I sell? I went right back to my budget. I know where I can give and take from, start massaging that and make that determination and just really getting clear on this whole entire path for me on my financial decision. And doing so, do I jump in before or do I just have to wait until I sell? And so having those numbers, that power right at your fingertips, because literally it took me about 20 minutes to evaluate that, is really, really where people need to understand what a budget is for. Yes, it feels restrictive, but yet at times like that where you need to make a really, really smart financial decision, you can come right there and look at it.
Okay, that's the answer for that question. And one more question is there. It's a funny one, right? And I think she's saying that she borrowed some money from a bank as a personal loan, and she invested the money in cryptocurrencies, and it gave her some lump sum amount, like a 200, 300% return, and she paid off the debt, and she having the profit remaining with her. So she's asking, is it a good, healthy way in the future also?
Um, she lucked out. It
Yeah,
worked out for her,
yeah,
but I just want her to ask herself, what if it wouldn't have? You know,
yeah,
right? It's her
yeah.
choice to make. It comes down to it. It worked out. It's almost kind of like gambling, right? She's
True.
gambled with it.
Yeah.
But I would ask her, like, if she lost 200 or 300%, then how would she take care of that loan? So hopefully that helps. I know it's not clear. It's not a yes or no. Like I said, I don't like to box in and give yes or no's. And crypto is something I am not knowledgeable in. I know what it is, I know what it's about, but it's not something I explore. And I know that other people do, and they do very, very well. So if it works for her, great. And if she's willing to take that risk, because that's where that comes into, is that investing part. If she's willing to take that risk and that impact, then that's good for her.
Wow. And Dale, we have discussed so many stuff in the loan, how the personal loan works and what is personal loan actually, and how we can avoid falling into kind of a debt situation, and how we can pay off the debt, and which we have to give the priorities, and how the vehicle loans work, and how the mortgages, and a lot of things we have discussed in this 35-40 minutes. And I would like to ask as a final question, what is your advice for the people who are listening to this podcast regarding loan and the banking loan and their personal loan stuff?
Be educated before you sign on that dotted line. Make sure, number one, you know what all the terms are. Sometimes there's clauses in there that you can't pay it off early. Make sure you know that. Also, then make sure you know the impact onto your budget and how that impacts you. If you're taking it out for a bit, how that's going to work. So just really educate yourself and gain as much knowledge as you can before you sign on that dotted line.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dylan, for your valuable time to spend with me in Echelon Talks. And for the listeners, thank you very much.
Thank you.